name's Tony Houchin, and I'm the head cross-country coach and associate director of track and field at Lamar University. We're a small Division I school in the NCAA in Beaumont, Texas, which is southeast Texas, about an hour and a half east of Houston. This is my 20th year coaching Division I athletics in the NCAA, and the coaching carousel drops you off at a lot of different spots. You kind of move around until you get to a place that appreciates you and compensates you well enough, and then also a place where you think you can be successful. And this is where I am right now, and I've had a lot of British athletes come through my doors at other places as well as here at Lamar. So
great. And so you've got obviously quite a run of British athletes that you're still coaching.
For sure.
So how many of those are you coaching face to face still, and how many of those are now just online athletes that you're coaching?
Sure. Well, obviously, given present circumstances, I'm not coaching anybody face to face. However, so I'm coaching everybody via correspondence. But this is something that I'm very, very accustomed to. So I coach post-collegiately people that are not on my university team. I coach Natasha Cockram, Welsh marathon record holder. I coach Verity Ockenden, who in December ran the third fastest 5K in British history indoors. I coach Samantha Blusky. She's an American who just ran the U.S. Olympic trials in Atlanta, and she was she finished 33rd, but she went in ranked, I think, 14th or 15th. She's run 2:29, and then I coach a good Irish woman, Catherine Horisky. She's 2:42 marathoner. I coach just a good handful of people via correspondence. But my history with that goes back quite far. Another Welsh athlete that I coached years ago, Alex Haynes, I coached him virtually entirely via correspondence. And we had such a good relationship. We got him to where he was sub 14 for 5K, and then he also ran 64:30 for the half marathon. So this is
fantastic.
This is old hat for me, man, like coaching via correspondence.
So obviously it's old hat for you. It's a really new thing a lot of coaches are having to suddenly adjust to without much notice. So kind of just run us through how you go about it, how much contact you have with the athletes, and how long has it kind of taken you to kind of build up the skills and the relationships to be able to do it successfully?
Sure. We are a very unique sport, distance running in particular, more than any other sport, I think. Whereas if you're on a football pitch, you got to see how athletes respond to certain situations, how they react to certain other players, and things like that. And even within the athletics world, we are not as technique driven as if somebody was a hammer thrower, and on a heavy throwing day, they're going to take, 80 throws, and each one, they have to be very particular about their foot plant, about posture and placement and things like that. With us, we're as less biomechanists and we're more physiologists. We are more concerned with at what cost does an athlete have to put out there to get a certain result. So we're more structuring and organizing the pushing various energy systems to get the kind of adaptation and training response that we're looking for, if you know what I mean. So for us, it's very data driven. So, I write workouts, and almost immediately after, they send me the results of the workouts, and we have a little back and forth, a little exchange. And this is something that doesn't necessarily come easily. I'm not one for testing. And this is personal, you know, like a lot of coaches, they're big. They want to get the VO2 max test. They want to get the lactate threshold, you know, finger pricks. And for me, like I more feel out what each individual athlete has. And through this relationship, through the coaching relationship, I kind of get a feel for, you know, when they're pushing hard and what's easy and what's not. And you kind of feel that out a little bit. So
how do you go about that then? Obviously, you've talked about kind of some of the data is quite easy in terms of timing. Like you say, you do tests. Do you get athletes to do like a perceived exertion? Do you use any sort of scale or anything like, or is it just based on their kind of language and how they talk to you?
Yep, a lot of it is based off of language. At the same time, the way that I coach, for me, a lot of what I do is geared towards injury prevention. Like if you're in world record shape, like, you know, the great, for a woman, if let's say she's in 2:10 marathon shape, but she's injured and she can't get to the start line, nobody's ever going to know. So with a lot of the sessions that I write, I err on the side of caution. We run really easy. And then over time, you know, I kind of inch things up, I kind of inch things up little by little until, and early on in the relationship, a lot of athletes, you know, they comment like, oh, you know, that was really easy. You know, I definitely could have done more. And early on in the relationship, I'll ask questions like, you know, after a session, like say a staple, anybody that knows me via coaching, they know that I'm big on 10-mile tempo runs, right? So if somebody, say I'm having somebody go out and they do 10-mile, a woman, like say Natasha, let's say she's doing a 10-mile tempo run at 6-minute pace, and the last 2 miles, I want you to pick up. So let's say she just, for some reason, she hits it spot on. She's 6 minutes for 8 miles. And then the last 2, she goes like 5:45 and 5:25 or something, right? So then, you know, early on in the relationship, maybe I'll ask her like, hey, so how did that feel? How was it challenging? So on the one hand, you get quantitative data based on like splits and volume and things like that. But then I rely heavily on qualitative data where I'm asking her things like, could you have done another mile? Could you have gone faster? What if you didn't pick it up? And could you have carried on it? How much longer do you think you could have carried on for 6-minute pace? You know, and a lot of people might think that this is kind of a willy-nilly approach, like it's not really specific, but you know, like it's all about the relationship that you have with that specific athlete. So, and yeah, we just kind of go from there, if you know what I mean.
So how often do you have contact with the athletes that you're remotely coaching in order to kind of keep that relationship going?
Sometimes it's daily. I mean, it depends. Because initially you're in more contact with the person because I need to get to know, like, for example, I never coached Natasha face to face. To this day, I don't think I've ever seen her work out. I've never seen her do a session.
Okay.
Crazy, right? And especially if you consider, I mean, she's taken almost 19 minutes off of her marathon PB. Since we've been working together. I saw her run the Houston Marathon, and then recently we went to Hanelli or whatever. I don't know how you say it. It's a Welsh. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. I'm going to butcher it. I already did butcher it. But we went up there, and those are some of the only times I've really seen her run. So yeah, we just, it's so, coaching in this way relies heavily on the relationship. So early on, we're in touch a lot more. We might have multiple FaceTimes in a week. We sometimes, Natasha and me, or Verity, or Samantha, or whoever, sometimes we literally will have a text exchange every single day. Okay. Yeah, and that still happens even as you get further along in the coaching relationship. It's time intensive.
Yeah. So how much does it differ then in terms of the amount of time and maybe the sessions and the things that you're doing? Because obviously you have, until recently, obviously had some face-to-face groups as well. What's been the biggest difference you've picked up on between trying to coach face-to-face and coaching athletes remotely?
Yeah, you know, like I say, I have a really good relationship with athletes that I coach. Yeah, so like as opposed to like when you see somebody, I can a lot of times tell the level of fatigue that they're bringing either to a session or to a recovery day. And I can kind of alter things just based on their body language. I can base things on mood, like, because we'll talk about things other than training, obviously. So when depending on what kind of attitude or mood they're bringing to the table in a regular conversation, I might be like Jordan Rowe, he's an English guy on my team right now. I've seen and actually to Jack Gooch, he's a Welsh guy. He's seen tremendous improvement this year. Like, he ran 4:03 for the mile. And there's sometimes when I can kind of tell if somebody's kind of down or something. I'm like, and it has nothing to do with how they feel about the team or the session or me. They're just tired, and I can see that. So that's the biggest change, is I have to rely. And sometimes you got to kind of read between the lines of text or a conversation. Like, if I don't see them, if we're just having a phone call, you got to kind of piece things together a little bit. And that's why it's really important to have a really close, strong relationship with the athlete. So then you're going to be a little more accurate, if you know what I mean.
Do you get athletes to send you any video of their sessions, or like doing drills or like shorter reps so that you can look at their form, or do you just rely on kind of conversations?
Nope. Yep. Just rely basically on conversations. Now that being said, because I've seen all of them run at times, like, there's things that I know some of them need to work on, like arm carriage, or because particularly with Verity and Natasha and Samantha, some of their races are televised. So like or they're live streamed. So, I'll see some of that footage and I'll be like, at this point, your arms are kind of crossing the midline, which is tough, or like, in the final stages of a race, say when Verity was when she ran 15:34 indoors, posture maybe changed a little bit. So then I might make some note of that in future sessions, even though I'm not sitting there watching it. Something we might do, say 200s or something, a short effort. I only work on biomechanics for short reps, because then you can focus on it. As opposed to long reps, you need to be focused on the effort and focused on the intended training of the day. So on a short rep, I might be like, hey, I want you to think a lot about your arm carriage. I want you to think about your knee drive. I want you to open your arms a little bit. So I do actually focus a little bit on biomechanics, but not overly so.
And how about the kind of relationship with, I guess, the support team that some of the athletes must have with their physios, strength and conditioning coaches? Do you get involved in the discussions with them about what sort of strength and conditioning they should be doing and what sort of injury prevention or rehab they should be doing as well?
Actually, I do, yeah. Particularly, so on both the collegiate level and at the post-collegiate, I want to say professional would imply a wage. So I say post-collegiate, you know what I mean? But so like they each have a team, respective of where it is they are. So like, for example, Verity down in Dorset, she's got a guy down there, Kyle Hackett Massage. He takes care of her. Natasha, she just moved from Wales. She went to Norfolk. So I don't know if she has a team yet out there, but they tell me what has been done. They tell me what their physio says are areas of weakness or problem areas that they're working on. And with Verity's team in particular, they contact me directly on occasion. Whereas like with Samantha and Natasha, those two individually.
What would be your kind of main advice to those coaches now here in, I guess, the UK and all over the world, really, who are having to suddenly go from seeing their athletes week after week, perhaps twice a week, to not seeing them at all? What would you say are the most important things that you've learned?
Yeah, some people might, on the surface, it might look as though you have to do less when you're coaching via correspondence, because you're not out at practice, you're not holding a stopwatch, you're not critiquing like kind of each rep or critiquing them during a specific rep, but it actually is a little bit more work when you in establishing
the relationships,
lines of communication and stuff like that. It's a little more time intensive doing things via correspondence than it is, I think, in person to person, especially because like when you're coaching face to face, you can do a large group of people and you can make a critique on a variety of people all at once. Whereas via correspondence, you just have that one person during a certain time slot, or you just have that one person during a certain exchange. Or
now, I was just wondering whether you've any thoughts or advice, I guess, for athletes who are not able to train as part of a group now, that are having to train solo, perhaps for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see that as a negative, training solo, and I don't. A lot of times when you're in with a group, sometimes you're doing runs a little bit over your head and you might not realize it, particularly on a recovery run, or sometimes because we're all inherently really competitive. So, you want to keep up on a rep, you want to keep up during a session, and sometimes you overextend yourself. So I think this is the time when people really have to spend time focusing on themselves and what they specifically need and what they want to specifically get out of a particular session or a training block. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little bit different, but I actually think the positives far outweigh the negatives, in my humble opinion.
Great, thank you. And I guess just one last question for me. I guess a number of your athletes will have been training for major championships, obviously looking for Olympic qualification or world qualification, and all of that's changed now. How are you advising them in this time when obviously competition has just been pushed back and there's quite a lot of uncertainty?
Yeah, so the way that I coach and the way that I talk to people, we're not looking at necessarily seasons or races. The way that we train and live, it's a lifestyle. More than a lot of other sports where, like, in football or other things, they have very defined windows where they're going to compete. Whereas with what we do, there's races all year long, whether it's on the road, on the track, via cross. There's all kinds of things going on year round. So you have to kind of be tuned in and turned on in perpetuity. Like, you just always have to be going. So with this, it's almost cliche. You hear a lot of other coaches out there saying the same thing: control what you can control. And for me, the things I think you control are your attitude and your effort. And without having any kind of races on the horizon or in close proximity, I think it's important for you to understand, like, whether or not there's a race coming up, you can still make significant progress. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to have a longer period of uninterrupted training, because races are great. And a lot of times races are kind of justify the work that you've been putting in a particular training block. But I'm very process driven. And I think that this just allows people to really focus on the process, and it's just a longer buildup. So if without overextending yourself, you can handle things. Rather, you can so you can just focus on what you're doing without the interruption of some little race coming up. It's not really a key race. It's not really an important marker for the season. So this allows you to just have a long, smooth build-up, if you know what I mean.
Where we are now, people might be at 80, 100 miles for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, potentially, without any races. Would you still recommend people having some more recovery to avoid that?
Not necessarily, because during this time, races are like bouts of intensity, and I'm a big believer that intensity causes injury, not volume. So if you temper the intensity during sessions, and you can keep the volume up for a long period of time without having to back off, which is going to only contribute to more aerobic development. And it's just, there's a lot of positives. So for me, like backing those times off are kind of on an as needed basis, if you know what I mean. So to just automatically factor them in, well, and it depends because if you've scheduled in a period of intense training, you clearly need to recover from that. So maybe you need to back off after a period of like really fast stuff, and then back off and then build back up a little bit. It depends on what it is you specifically are working on. Whatever the coach and athlete feel that athlete needs, they put together a plan for it. And if they, like I say, if they determine they need time off, then that's what you do, and there's a million different ways to get to the same different point. Like I have my way of doing things and other coaches have their ways of doing things, and they're both right. So not one coach isn't doing things wrong. That coach has seen things and had success in their way of doing things. And I've had success in doing things and seeing things in the way that I do. So everybody has a way. And it just really boils down to the relationship that athlete has with that coach. And
you and your family are all well? Should have asked at the start. I'm assuming you're all doing fine.
Yep. I'm a rule follower. So, they tell us to hunker down and stay at home, man. I'm staying at home. I get out for a run on occasion. We only go to the store on occasion. Otherwise, we go outside for exercise and, hang out, and everybody's Netflixing. We're about done with Netflix. So, we're just hanging out, man. It's actually good. Everybody's, going to be really fit and a lot better cooks at the end of this period. So